My name is Soraya Williams, and I am super excited to welcome you all to today's virtual session. Today's event is designed to give you a real world look at how to show up and stand out in the interview process, from first impressions to the follow up, whether you're applying for your first job, switching careers, or just curious about how exactly to level up. You are definitely in the right place. We're going to start with a short, moderated discussion to kind of ground us in the reality of today's job market. And then we are opening the floor to you all to engage directly with our panelists. Now we can hop right into it. As we all know, interviews today can feel like a black box. You send out dozens of applications, you get ghosted, or you land the interview, but you leave wondering what happened. Like, why could I not tell them who I am? Why did they ask me about myself and all of a sudden I went blank? Um, so you're not imagining it and you're not alone. The job market has definitely changed. It is somewhat more competitive. There are more layers, there's more automation. It's confusing. So that's why we wanted to bring together an amazing panel for you all, who you all are about to hear from because I am rambling. So I do want them to introduce themselves, kind of tell a little bit about who they are, what they do, and even why they decided to come and speak to you all on an evening like this. And then we'll kind of go from there. So if we want to hop in, Alyssa, you are the first one on my block. So if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alyssa O'Neill. I currently work for a boutique agency and I'm a recruiter. I mainly focus in telecom and technology, so IT and telecom staffing. And I'm really happy to be here and share some insight with you guys.
Next up, Ashlyn.
Hey, I'm Ashlyn. I am currently an account manager. About a year and a half ago, I actually did a whole career change and pivoted outside of HR. But I've spent the last almost 10 years in HR, whether it's in a corporate environment doing talent acquisition, career development, or in university systems, professionally or volunteering. So been able to clock in a lot of hours with students and young grads and early professionals.
Thank you, Ashlyn. Heather.
Hi there, I'm Heather Bruder. I am a consultant right now in the technology sphere, and I've spent the last 10 years working in technology, specifically in revenue operations teams. So in my previous roles, I worked on building and hiring out teams, working with internal transfers and building out personnel that way. So, and just excited to join because I think it's tough to find the skills and a direct path in career these days. So networking is my number one go-to.
Thank you, Heather. And next up, Nicole.
Hi, my name's Nicole Carter. I'm a senior lecturer at Kennesaw State University. I teach statistics and data science classes there, and I'm the course coordinator for courses in our general education program. What I love most about my job is actually the ability to mentor students through their academic careers and prepare them for the workforce. And I know, especially in the beginning, it can be really intimidating applying for jobs and going through that whole process and kind of self-doubting yourself, especially as women. I know that we have that imposter syndrome that we don't belong at the table, but you absolutely do. And I'm really happy to be here to help you out in whatever way I can.
Thank you, Nicole. And then last but certainly not least, Lamont.
How everybody doing this evening? Lamont Nelson. I'm currently the Director of Culture and Belonging at APL Logistics. I have over probably 25 years of experience in the HR space, but I'm glad to be in this space because I don't have to be objective. I can be subjective now in terms of the call outs that we need to do in terms of moving that equity needle in this space right now. Pretty much I'm glad to be here. I mean, the work that my good friend Sarai and Ms. Williams are doing is purpose-driven work. And I'm glad to be on this panel with the great panelists on this board, and I'm willing to share what I see from my perspective, okay?
Thank you, thank you. So as you all can hear, it's a lot of different perspectives on this panel, right? And we wanted to make sure that you were hearing from really different parts of the hiring process. Some are working on the front lines of sourcing and screening, and others oversee the culture and belonging at a company-wide level. So, especially for our students, because like I told the panelists, these are current students as well as some alums. So a lot of them are ready to enter the workforce, or maybe they're wanting to do these pivots and transitions. And they really are like, what are companies looking for? How are decisions really being made? What makes someone stand out beyond just their resume? So I think that's a good place for us to kind of start. What are you seeing right now in the hiring landscape from your seat? Is it as tough as it feels? And like, what context or clarity can you give us for those of us on the outside looking in?
I would like to share some insight to that just because I work very closely with people who work with our clients. I'm noticing that a lot of, with a couple new things that are coming, with the political climate and things like that, businesses are being a little bit more conservative. They're only making true hires that really are going to impact their business positively. And they are being very stringent with their budgets.
Did anyone want to add anything onto that?
Sure, I'll add something. I know I feel like it's especially challenging for those in entry level positions and those trying to pivot careers specifically, especially if you have gaps in employment or you don't have a long employment history. So what I'm seeing a lot is the job market is obviously very competitive, but what we're seeing is they're expecting candidates to have not just technical skills, but also the soft skills kind of right out of the gate. Can you show up and be useful? And can I put you in front of clients or to represent my company? So I think it's really important to address both of those things. Upskilling is something that I think is really important, but also employers want people who are adaptable and show initiative, because you have to be able to pivot and transform yourself to fit the role that they need you to fill. So learning quickly, communicating clearly, and being able to collaborate with teams, I think are all really important skill sets for you to showcase kind of as you enter the workforce.
So that's a perfect segue into the next question. So knowing that these things are shifting, and what exactly the job seekers can do differently or more intentionally. So I know Nicole kind of hit on some of those things, like showing that initiative, making sure that you are telling, not just telling, but showing that you are adaptable, showing that you are able to fit those gaps and honestly relieve those pain points that said employer has, right? But how do we do that? And I know that's like a loaded question, but it sounds good. Everything is good in theory, right? But how do we really put that into practice? Like, we know that it's different, but in what ways can we strengthen our chances to like show up differently than we have been in the past?
I'll take a stab.
I
at
would,
that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah,
Go ahead.
please.
No, go ahead.
Oh,
No,
no.
no. Go for it.
Okay. I would say, really understand that your resume is speaking for you before you ever get a chance to speak for yourself. To Heather's point earlier, networking is huge. Your resumes are going through different ATS systems. They're being pulled for keywords. You're not really getting the chance to showcase yourself until you get through several different layers of screenings. And so you've got to make sure you're diversifying how you're getting yourself out there. So that's where the networking comes in. That's where, really utilizing the people that are in your circle to look at your resume. Are you creating and crafting a resume for every job that you're applying for? It's really overwhelming. If you think you want to apply for 100 jobs, you might need 100 resumes. Thankfully, we have tools out there now like AI that can really help you make that process quicker. I just would very much so encourage you to make sure that you make sure it sounds like you, make sure that it's realistic and you're using it to just amplify your voice and not create somebody that you're not, because that will show up and that's the last thing you want, throughout that space. And so diversify is one. How are you getting yourself out there? Make sure that you are really crafting your resume smartly, There's a lot of really great YouTube videos out there on how to do that and how to use AI to help you make that process faster. And, just don't be shy to just continue pushing and pushing and pushing. Follow up with people from this panel, follow up with people from other things, reach out to random LinkedIn or Instagram connections. And you never know who you might be able to be introduced to because of somebody you reached out to. So that would be a few of the ways I would recommend on how to make yourself stand out now.
Lamont, did you want to add? Because I know Ashlyn just hit a lot of.
I know she hit a home run with that one. I think the biggest thing I could come behind is more so do things that make you uncomfortable. You have to stretch yourself. You gotta, because you're doing the same thing. It's like living in the Matrix, right? You're doing the same thing every day, but you gotta learn how to do things. I always tell people treat obstacles as opportunity. So you gotta stretch beyond to the point. Hey, when you know you're applying for a specific job, tailor your resume behind that. Making sure that you can tell success stories of what you have done, and making sure, like you said, you don't know who's in the room. I've learned that lesson a long time ago. You speak to everyone in that room because you don't know who can do what for you, especially as you get in, especially on the corporate side of the relationships are everything. Because, like they said, you can be the jack of all trades and never master none of them. And it's very important that you, guess what, do things that stretch you because it's only going to make you better. And you got to do that. My friend really topped it off from that stand there because when you look at networking and people are like, okay, networking, what is that? What does that look like? Networking is, guess what? It is what it is. After this call, I'm planning on reaching out to all these young ladies. Never met them a day in my life. But due to the fact that, guess what? They can probably bring something to me that I never had. Because with a lot of people, when we say on accountability, I always believe that, and growing up, I hung out with people that knew more than me. Because most people get intimidated people that know more than them. You hang out with people that know more, and you're going to what? You're going to grow, right? But if you hang around people that think the same as you, how far you think you're going to stretch yourself and grow? So make a point to, guess what, build relationships with those who, guess what, make me more advanced than you. That means they're not going to dumb you down because most of the ones that's in that space, they know how to lean in and give grace and have empathy for that and be able to walk you through the process.
I just love to add on there because I will preach networking just because I put myself into really uncomfortable situations, but I have always gained more and connected more with other people through that. So it's meaningful in a lot of different ways, professionally and personally. But I understand too, it can be really inaccessible. I have a 4-year-old, I work, and so it's tough to find those times where when am I going to really put quality effort into this when the reality is that time is really, really stretched. So I just want to encourage, to get creative. There's so many more networks out there through things like free Slack groups, through free professional networks. I definitely don't think there's an issue with investing in it, but I do think there's a lot of good free resources out there where people are just trying to connect and have a conversation a little bit more casually than what you see in an interview. And being unafraid in those situations and taking those opportunities is what's going to get you through those imposter syndrome periods where you say, I have been part of this conversation. I don't need to be qualified to answer this question or to have an idea or to contribute to it. So, that's just something I encourage out there for different technical niches. There are a lot of existing networks out there. You just might need to do a little digging, and again, a little bit of asking people in your network where to go to find these opportunities.
So that I have a few things that I want to pull out because you are all dropping different nuggets, and I'm like, oh, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that. So rewinding to the ATS, right? The tracking. Can we kind of speak to that for the ladies who may have never heard of that, right? They are thinking that when I send my resume, an actual person is going to read this entire resume. Can we just speak about what is actually happening when we go on LinkedIn or Indeed or whatever, we upload our resume? What is happening?
Sorry, Soraya. I would love to answer that. I work in an ATS every day. Like every day. And I also work in many different job boards every day. So basically what's happening, someone like myself or Ashlyn in her previous career in HR is going through and creating something called a Boolean search. And what that's going to be is all those key words that someone's looking for in a job title. So say you're applying for a tier 1 help desk role, I'm going to look for Active Directory, and I'm going to look for Azure, and I'm going to look for desktop support or break fix or things like that. And those resumes that have those words are going to pull for me. And I'm going to call those people based on what those resumes say. So Nicole's saying that your resume speaks, for you before you can is so true. And tailoring that resume is also extremely important because of those Boolean searches and because of those, LinkedIn has an AI search now for recruiters. So all of those things, hitting those keywords, really looking into the job description where you're applying and being sure that you tailor your skills to match that skill set. Obviously, you want them to be true, but tailoring the skills that you've gained to work in that position and why you'd be successful in that position.
Definitely. I want to add, this was kind of an outlier unicorn situation in my previous career. We didn't have an AI, or we didn't do Boolean searches. We had an in-house ATS. So I was the recruiter that did look at every resume. So there are companies like that exist. I'm sure there's not many though. So I wouldn't count on it. But I think in either situation, and Alyssa, tell me if I'm wrong here, the formatting of your resume matters in the sense of, is it easy to read? Are you putting sentences together that are easy to understand? To Lamont's point earlier, are you selling yourself, and are what you're putting across actually, is it going to make me think you're going to add value to the organization that I'm recruiting for? That's going to be one of the big things. That's where you have metrics and things like that come in. But in my previous experience, where I sifted through thousands of resumes, it needs to be something I can read in 15 seconds and be like, yep, I want to look at that again. And if you're just kind of typing out job description information and you're not typing out impact information with maybe one or two sentences of what this job title means, then you're going to lose my attention really quickly. And I'm going to move on to a resume that's going to keep my attention, because I, as a recruiter, was focusing on, I have 500 resumes to look through. I've got to figure out how to whittle it down to 100 before I start reading more detail. So I'm trying to take people out of the pile rather than create a pile of people. If that kind of also helps give a little bit of context as you start from the really big part of the funnel and work your way down.
Ashley makes sense. I'm gonna come back behind, because you're right, Ashley. When you get to somebody like my level, I'm looking at her, I'm like this. I'm gonna look at Ashley. Don't give me 3,000 resumes. I don't want to see that. Less is more. I want to see it, because I'm leaning on Ashley like to present good resumes to me. Because if I got to read 4 pages, I'm gonna check out off the rip when it comes down to it. So we want to make sure that you're hitting the solid points, because you're right. Your resume is your bio. That speaks for you. It's a breather document that's going to speak for you without me seeing a face, an address, all the above. It speaks for who you are. And when you get to that point, I'm seeing certain things that I'm going to tick out. By that time, me and Ashton got a chemistry working together, as you know what I'm looking for from a leadership standpoint. So we speak in the common language. So she's like, I know I ain't going to send that to little Mom, because I know he's going to be like, well, what is this? So when you do that, understand, just give you some insight. When I'm dealing with someone like that from a director level, I'm seeing it. I'm leaning on Ashton to give me the right thing. So she knows what I'm gonna look for, what I'm gonna see. So keep in mind that most of the time that you might be thinking you got all these words on your resume is gonna get you in the door. Ashton tell them, no, it's not. It's not gonna get you in the door. It's really gonna be next. So kind of understand that less is more. And you can do words that can be so powerful, and buzzwords that I would look for will really get you to the door. And I'm like, okay, I want to talk to this person, Ashton. Bring them to my attention. So just to give you that insight from a high level, that's kind of how we look at it.
I'll just kind of add a little bit to it in April's question in the chat too. I think if you're in entry level position and you're coming right out of school, your resume doesn't really need to be any more than a page, honestly. If you have a little bit more skills and experience, 2 pages, but I have been working for a very long time. I couldn't imagine submitting a resume to anybody that was more than 2 pages because what you're really trying to do is you're trying to pick out those keywords from the job posting and align your skills with that description. Don't rewrite the description in your resume. Say, okay, I know they're looking for this, this, and this. What have I done that can showcase that I can do those things? And it doesn't have to be a direct connection to. If you've been out of work and you've been managing your household, an actionable result is I managed a household budget of $2,000 a month and I did it with 100% bill payment on time. That's something that it's an impact statement that has verbs and results attached to it. And think about volunteer work that you've done that shows teamwork, that shows leadership, that shows planning skills. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to think about, oh, they're looking for this thing specifically. No, you have already been working on all these skills for your whole life. Find a way to align them with what they're looking for.
Thank you, Nicole. That was powerful.
Just really quick, I was going to say, speaking to all of that, I was just going to say, typically on a resume, I usually say 3 to 4 jobs or like 7 years. And that's a good way to like limit it, whichever like comes first. That's a good way to kind of limit it to a page and a half.
Thank you for that. And I know I see the questions coming in on the chat. So we did answer April's, like no more than 2 pages, 1 page for entry level. I love the pull out of the transferable skills being on things that you've been doing, managing your household, et cetera, et cetera. Those things can really speak volumes. And then Da Vinci is asking if we've had more jobs, do we list all of them or the ones that may be relevant? I'm thinking that's where Da Vinci was going. What are your thoughts there?
For myself, I want to see a resume that covers the timelines, right? Maybe not as far and in depth and points on things that don't quite touch very relevant to the position. But if you have experience that's, again, highly relevant to it, very recent, and really fills out the picture of why you are a great fit for this job. That's what I want to see without having to then go into those questions. Because I think, no one likes to have to go in and say, well, we're kind of missing these years. Is there something that we need to talk about here? If you can guide the conversation so that there is no, negative connotation, no negative things that someone needs to kind of go in and overcome. I think that that's really helpful. But again, it's your story. This is your platform to really highlight all of your main characteristics. So, guide it in that way.
I do see a hand. If you can put it in the chat, and then we'll have you come off mute if we need a little bit more guidance. I do know one of the things, because maybe the students are acting a little shy and maybe more questions will come in the chat shortly. But one of the things, being that a lot of our ladies are preparing for mock interviews next week, and they are going to be virtual, what is like a red flag for you when it comes to a virtual like interview? Because I've heard some horror stories of the way people will show up for those interviews or whatever. So if everybody could just share at least one red flag while we get a few more questions, I think that would be kind of helpful.
Not being on a stable surface. It's fine if you're using a phone, but set it up somewhere. I had a lady that I interviewed, and she was sitting on her couch and the laptop was going like this, and it wasn't favorable for me or the interviewer as I was sitting in with her. So just being on a flat surface, whether you need to put the blur up or just prop it somewhere, like just having it realistically look like all of your attention is focused on that one screen for that one person.
Just going to echo on that. I think that you actually only get between 30 minutes to an hour with the person who will become your boss on the phones throughout the interview process. Whatever you can do to make that as distraction free as possible and just allow it to highlight the best part of you.
I think the biggest thing that come off that is engagement energy. You gotta have energy on that call. You gotta make me believe what you're saying. I think eye contact. I always tell people, no matter if it's virtual, treat it like it's a face-to-face interview. Don't take for granted that we're not in the same room. And also dress attire. Make sure, guess what? Make sure that your system is up to par and you won't have no technical difficulties. Because if I'm sitting there waiting 5 minutes for you, what you think I'm gonna do? Well, understand one thing, ladies, time is the new currency. Time means everything, because if you're late for this, you're gonna be late. Y'all can fill in the blank. So it's real imperative that, guess what? And ask meaningful questions. When I say ask meaningful questions, just don't take for granted that you ask me about benefits or the PTO. Ask me a question that interview me, because you want to make sure this is somewhere you want to work. Put me to work. And when I say that, I can just give you a hypothetical question I ask people. I might ask this, Heather, I asked Heather this question. Heather, if you could describe yourself with 3 adjectives, what would it be? I'm challenging you. I'm making you think. Or I'm even asking a question like this. Are you a thermostat or a thermometer? Those are challenging questions that I'm gonna that make me like, damn, okay. Y'all could jot them down too. I'm telling you, those questions to get you through the door. It'll get my attention. But you gotta ask powerful, meaningful questions because at the end of the day, it's all about culture and relationship building. Because that question you're gonna ask as from my position, I don't remember like, wow, she asked me a question I had to really think about. And that's what separates you from the pack. Because what they say, you separate, you dominate. So always keep that in mind, okay?
Yeah, I think all of those things are very good. I think it's kind of been applied that you should have your camera on, but definitely have your camera on, and dress the part and look the part. I know it sounds silly. I tell my students this all the time. I still do it as a 39-year-old woman when I'm preparing to go speak or something like that, is power posing. Go stand in front of the mirror and tell yourself how awesome you are for a little bit. It does a world of difference for your confidence and being able to show up because you know how great you are. This is your first opportunity to show them how great you are. And in hiring for our small business and for the university, probably one of the biggest things we're looking for in that conversation is a culture fit. So let your personality shine. Don't be scared. Go in there and own the room. And because what's the worst that could happen? They don't call you back, but you show up timid, not confident, lacking enthusiasm. They're definitely not going to call you back. So, you know, how bet on yourself, I think is probably the best thing.
Yeah. I can't really add anything different. I definitely just want to emphasize, show up like you're showing up for an in-person interview. There's a bit of that prep, when you're commuting to an in-person interview, you're walking to the front desk, you're introducing yourself, you have some of that adrenaline and nerves going, but you miss that process when it's a virtual interview. You go right from like being comfortable on your couch to being on the spot. And so do what you need to do. Give yourself time to get that adrenaline going so you can get sharp. Don't rush into it last minute. And if you show up like you're showing up for an in-person interview, your mentality is going to be in the right space. Your confidence is going to be in the right space. Your background is going to be in the right space. To the point of distractions, you don't want your laptop falling all over the place or your phone wiggling, but also like your background matters because that's what I'm looking at when I'm talking to you. And so find as, neutral of a background as possible because you don't want your background overpowering you. So that way I remember your background and not you. And, to Lamont's point as well, everybody here made really great points, but do your technology check. Give yourself 5 to 10 minutes beforehand to truly get on and double check that everything's going to work. Is there a system update? Do you need to tell the recruiter, hey, there's something going on with the link. It's not working, or, you want to seem like you're ahead of the game and not trying to come up with an excuse as to why you're late. That's really, really important as well.
So I definitely love the different tips that we're getting, especially like the power pose. Love that. Us not just rolling out of the bed and hopping on the interview. Maybe we want to do something a little different there because now we're going to go to the mirror, do some power poses. Are there any other tips? Because Indigo mentioned in the chat, just sometimes you can freeze up. So what do you suggest would help with that anxiety?
It's okay to ask an interviewer to circle back. That's like the number one thing that I'm going to say. Don't think that because you ask someone to circle back to a question that you are like demonizing yourself to not get the role. It's okay to say, that's a really great question. I would love to circle back to that. Like, that's okay. They have other things they want to ask you. I've asked people questions on screenings and they're like, hey, can we circle back to that? And we will circle back to it. And they have a great answer. It's okay to be honest with someone that is, having a conversation with you. They're not having a conversation with you for no good reason. They obviously saw your resume. They saw your professionalism through that resume. So it's okay to ask someone to circle back, but make sure you ultimately answer the question.
I tell my kids this a lot with their sports and kind of coaching their teams through the years, and I truly believe it, even in new things that I challenge myself to do every day, because I consider myself a lifelong learner, and I think it's really important to have some humility when you are, you know, in that place where you're just getting yourself out there. But I think it's really important to remember you either win or you learn. So if you go into an interview and you're nervous and something bad goes wrong, or you don't feel like you put your best foot forward, learn from it and take that with you to the next one. I think it's really important to remember, like, you're going to have to apply for a lot of jobs most likely before you get one. You can't expect that the first thing that you apply to is, that's it. And then just get discouraged and let that keep you from performing better the next time. No, you take what you learn from that experience and you use it to improve the next time and the next time. And eventually you're just going to be killing it. You're not even going to be nervous going into these things because you've had the practice, you've had the reps. And I think it's really important to remember that those small wins, they build momentum and learn from every opportunity you can.
Yeah, there we go. I'd love to add to, in my previous role, and I know in other places as well, when I've worked in universities, one of the big things that we like to ask is specific scenarios. Like, tell me about a time in your professional experience or in your past when you did X. And so I would always mentor folks that were applying for jobs internally in my old company. Like, you need to have at least 5 different situations prepared. And you need to think about some, 5 different like main topics. Maybe it's problem solving, it's teamwork, it's, fixing something when maybe you made a mistake unintentionally, or, I'm assuming it's not going to be intentional, but, unintentionally made a mistake. How do you go about fixing it? Tell me about a time when you, maybe failed at something, in a work environment, in a volunteer environment. Prepare ahead of time. That makes the reps that Nicole was talking about, I think, a lot easier to get to become seamless. And then you can start refining them as you go through it. But when you do show up without having those prepared, I mean, I would write down bullet points for myself and I would think through it ahead of time. I would ask somebody to read them out to me or ask me a fake question and I try to answer it. Go through some role play. Don't let the interview be the first time you say these answers out loud, because they're going to throw you off. They're going to ask you a question you didn't expect. And if you already have these in the back of your mind, then you're going to be much more likely to be able to manipulate. And I say that with a lot of positive intent, manipulate that experience to fit the question. So that way you can really showcase yourself the best. So huge recommendation for me, at least 5 scenarios. They all need to be different. And if it's not professional, like work experience, then I would always recommend pull from volunteer. If you can't find volunteer, pull from school. If you can't pull from school, pull from life, but try to use life as your last option, because the way that, we interact with our personal relationships are going to be different than we interact in our professional relationships. And you want to make sure that you're conveying yourself professionally. Even if you think you are, if your situation may not come across professional, that could, be something that's detrimental to you in an interview and you didn't even realize it.
It's where I want to pick great answers. Y'all killed that answer. Nicole, you remind me of something that you said about transparency. And I always tell people transparency is nothing without vulnerability, period. And when now you hit that bullseye, because you got to look at when you're going into the interview, it's simple. Interviewing is like a monologue. Only person that's telling the story is you. And I was always tell people, I just said, use this theory. I used to call it the bar. Give me the background, the action, and the result. You just stick to that and don't get away from that. That's pretty much where everything they summed up, they share with you guys is pretty much known, because don't nobody know the story better than you. It's all about how you distribute it and how you share it with me. And that's just being your authentic self and telling your story. And just remember, background, action, result. You just stick to that. You can't go wrong. Now, if you get sideways, you start mumbling and start rambling, then you're going to lose me. But if you stick to the script, and like you said, there's nothing wrong with writing that question down and going back to it and getting your thoughts together. Because now some people use the tactic, they're like, can you repeat that question again? Because they're trying to figure out the answer. versus going back sometimes and give a bad answer to it. But to that point, just understand there's nothing wrong with the transparency. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever, because that will get you further along. Because again, you're showing me that you're human. You're showing me that, guess what? I'm gonna lean in and give grace to that, like I said earlier before. So always keep that in mind when you go on the face. I said, because I know you interview, people get nervous, you get hands get sweaty. I get nervous every time I get on camera, and I talk all the time. But that's a good feeling, because if I don't get nervous, I mean I'm not excited about what I'm doing. And I think everybody on this call is doing purpose-driven work. And when you're doing purpose-driven work, it means something. And you want to make sure that you're displaying it the right possible way. So always keep that in mind. So don't count yourself out, all right? You'll be fine. Just take a couple of deep breaths. And sometimes, guess what? Just know this. Success is what? An illusion. Purpose is the conclusion. If you can get that, you'll understand where you're going to go in life, okay?
But we're getting close to our time. I do see like 2 more questions, so you can come off of mute.
So I've applied for several government opportunities, both county, city, as well as state, not too many federal. And the only responses I'll get thus far is the general email stating, "We've received your application, thank you for applying, and if we find that you're a match, then we'll be in touch." What can one do if you're not getting any responses inviting you for interviews?
I don't have as much experience in the government realm, but I think that this is probably somewhere I try and turn to, either networking with someone trying to find an informational interview target, that is, maybe someone within the department or working within the realm that could maybe give you a little bit more insight about what the successful interview process is. Honestly, when you just don't know where to start, it's just anywhere works.
Thank
I would
you.
also, I think you mentioned, and I apologize if I read the wrong part in the chat, but I think you had mentioned you'd done different schooling and education. Utilize the Career Services Center as well at previous, institutions that you've been in, because you also don't know just how far their networks go. And if they're able to get you in contact with somebody, Nicole probably is a great person to speak on that. But that's something that I lean into and have learned, a lot about in my time working with universities is, universities create relationships for different purposes, and that all is meant to tie back into helping their students be able to thrive and succeed. And so if you have the ability to go back and tap into career services or somebody that you would know on campus, or through that campus, that can try to get you in touch with somebody that may just be an informational resource. That would be another maybe creative solution to try to learn more about how to get in the right way to that process.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that. So every university has not just a university-wide career and planning center, but most independent colleges and departments also have their own form of that. It could be events or whatever, but at least at KSU, we are our programs are heavily applied. So it is our mission to go out and find industry partners to bring on campus so that we can make those connections with students. But even if you're no longer a current student there, those services are still available to you as an alumni. So if you want to email me after, kind of let me know I work in the University System of Georgia. So we all do things, we kind of play by the same rules. But are you also the one that asked about, building your curriculum vitae without any teaching experience? From my experience, because I went through graduate school, and as a graduate student, I was a graduate teaching assistant. So I was able to actually get teaching experience in the classroom before I went into industry. But that helped me come back and be able to do that. And I hire 3 graduate students to work under me, and I train them to teach. They end up teaching their own independent classes. So there's many opportunities within your department, if you're in a graduate level program, to get in-class teaching experience working with your department. Again, happy to kind of walk you through that process and what it looks like if you're considering continuing to go on, if you do enter a PhD program, they're going to ask you to pick one of two tracks, either a teaching track or a research track. If you go a teaching track, you're going to be required to be in the classroom. So, so if you want to get my email address and reach out to me, I'd be happy to meet with you independently and talk you through that process.
Thank you so much for that, Nicole. Like all the other ladies, any of our panelists who are okay with me passing along their LinkedIns or their emails, I will do that. I will make sure you all have all of that as well. We are a little bit over our time. So I know that we can talk all day about all things interviewing and resumes for sure. But now that you all have had this conversation with our panelists, and I know if you're like me, you're going to walk away from this and say, I wish I would have asked this. If that is you, get the questions to me, and I will gladly see if our panelists will let us tap more of their knowledge. Okay. I think they will be okay with it. But we definitely are super thankful for you all giving us this time today. I think it was super helpful. Hopefully our ladies feel the same. Y'all can feel free to use emojis. Yes, I see some clapping. I'm like, please don't leave me hanging right here. But yes, panelists, thank you so much for giving us this time. The recording will be available for our ladies that missed it, as well as the ladies who want to just review what we spoke about. But thank you, panelists. Thank you, ladies, for attending. Did anyone have anything they want to say as a last minute something that is just pressing on their heart? Feel free to come off mute.
I want to say that I promise I can spell, but my keys were sticking, and everything that I said in the chat just looks like I could not spell, but I promise that I can.
Okay, so PSA, Alyssa can spell. It was just her keys. Okay, we are definitely walking away with that. No one thought you couldn't spell Alyssa, I promise.
I'd like to just say one thing in closing,
Nicole,
if you don't mind. I think, I know this process is so intimidating and there's a lot of fear behind it, but please remember that your resiliency, your adaptability, your determination is what make you an asset. Employers are looking to hire mature, focused, motivated people. So just believe in your value, believe in what you have to bring to the table, and that's going to help others see it in you as well.
Last I got to close out really with this. Just remember, everyone was called. Faith is taking the first footsteps, even when you don't see the whole staircase. You will never know how far you can go unless you, guess what, keep looking forward, because you don't want to get caught up being a victim. You want to be the conqueror, and just know that and believe in yourself, and you'll make it. That's what we all here for, to help. Purpose-driven work, like I said from the beginning. All these bright young ladies I'm on the panel, I'm honored to be on here. They gave some real good information, so leverage that, okay? That's all I got, my friend.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been great, and I'm happy to have my information shared, and would be happy to connect and talk about anything that I might be able to shine a light on.
Thank you all so much, and ladies, enjoy your day, and gentlemen. I'm not used to having a man on the call. I'm sorry.